Hello and welcome to Game Pass Forever, a standalone segment of the Outside is Overrated podcast. Each month, or now every other month, we dive into a new game off the Xbox Game Pass lineup as voted on by our supporters on Patreon. This segment exists because of our generous backers on Patreon. If you enjoy this content, please visit www.patreon.com/OiO and pledge $2 a month to support the show. And then you can also vote on the games that we play. Outside is Overrated is presented by Premier Health. Check out their website at premierhealthmn.com. That's premierhealthmn.com. And with that, I'm your host, Tom Sidlacik, and I am so excited to try something new with this episode. We're doing the first of two parts on Monster Hunter Rise. We've got a slightly new format with a whole host of friends joining us. I didn't know exactly how many people were going to be jumping on when I wrote that, so a whole host means one extra person.
That's all right. He's a very important person. That you can count him as a host.
Joe, you are the best, Joe. You're just the best.
Yeah, he's all right. We've got the Hobby Box, Joe Burns.
Heyo.
Dr. C, Casey Aline.
Hey, what's going on, everybody?
And Brian Camille.
Hi, everybody.
Today we're talking about Monster Hunter Rise, released in March 2021. Monster Hunter Rise is the 15th entry in the series and has a Metacritic rating of 87 on Xbox. You play a hunter tasked with slaying a rash of large monsters. The core gameplay loop consists of accepting a quest, loading up on side quests, hunting a big monster, carve, turning your quest, upgrade your gear. The end.
You forgot about eating dango before you go out.
What I do with my dongo is my own business. Burnsy, you and me, we played some Monster Hunter World together. What were your expectations going into Rise?
I really wasn't 100% sure what to expect. I liked World okay enough, I guess, and I thought Rise was much different than World, but then I had that mixed up with a game that came out around the same time on the Switch, which was Monster Hunter Stories 2, I think. And so I really wasn't sure what to expect. I was looking forward a little bit to like the Monster Hunter combat because it had been a while since I played that. And I didn't play that game to death, really. So I never really got sick of it. I just kind of played other stuff and dropped off of it. So I don't know. I wasn't 100% sure what to expect.
Yeah, World was a timeless classic. Casey, you had never played a video game before. How disappointed were you that there was no laundry to do in Monster Hunter Rise?
I mean, one man's laundry is another man's monster slaying, right? I mean, it's just a different man's grind. Either you're grinding to make money slinging laundry for cabinets, or you're killing monsters for armor. I mean, in Fame, it's the same thing, right?
Yeah, basically the same. Brian, you came into this game, you had dabbled in World, but it never really grabbed you. You're now hundreds of hours into Rise. What convinced you to jump back into this franchise?
Real quick, from Casey's little dissertation there, I think there's a lot of lore that I'm missing from these episodes. Okay, anyways. So,
yeah, all you have to do is listen to them. I mean, you're involved. It's pretty easy anywhere that you get podcasts.
If my voice isn't on the podcast, no interest. So anyways, I played some World, and for those of you that don't know, Monster Hunter has a notorious learning curve. Notorious. It is, in a lot of ways, it's very, what's the word I'm looking for? It's not easy to pick up, and it's definitely not something that's just intuitive. So they always say that either you played Monster Hunter just short enough to not get hooked, or you did. So World didn't catch me, but Rise definitely did.
Yeah, to the tune of hundreds of hours. Let's dive more into the onboarding. Burnsy, you had some experience with World. How was the initial impact of Rise? Did it take you long to get your monster hunting feet under you?
It was a little bit easier. I mean, it's still confusing to... So it's still telling you to go talk to this person, talk to this person, talk to this person, look at this, here's this person. And so it's throwing you in 18 directions right away at the start.
Well, that's true. Yeah, I agree. But you'd already done the core Monster Hunter loop before. For me, I thought it was really easy. It's just all right, talk to all the people, and now I get to play Monster Hunter. Cool.
So the one thing I will say is that to get into multiplayer, it is a lot more straightforward in Rise than it was in World. because in World you had to get like to a certain part of the story in order to do it, whereas here it's really just you need to talk to the right like couple of NPCs first, and then you can create a lobby. Now that's still clunky, and sending an invite doesn't always send an actual invite to a person until you hit like the right combination of 3 buttons in a row, but eventually it works.
So the key takeaway there is to have Burnsy run all of your multiplayer sessions, because I don't know, is that clunky? But it was a weird thing with the world that you brought up. Like, it wasn't just reaching a certain point in the story. Like, each new monster that you hunted would have like an intro cutscene, and until you had watched that cutscene, you couldn't play it with other players. And like, even if you were like chugging through monsters together with your buddies, all of a sudden, like, you get to a new monster, everyone has to stop, everyone has to drop out, everyone has to watch the cutscene independently with their character, and it was just a very weird system with World.
Yeah, I mean, I would say the clunkiest part of multiplayer this time was waiting for your friends to carry frickin' eggs across the map before you could go on and do what you're actually there to do. But I don't think that's the
worst
game's
missions.
fault. I don't think that's the game's fault.
Why'd you look at me? He's the one with the golden egg.
I referred to
I had to
multiple,
get that thing back.
I referred to multiple people.
Brian, did that little bit of experience that you had with World before getting hooked really help with the onboarding in Rise, or was it just a clunky slog until this game got its hooks in you?
Definitely clunky slog. And even kind of getting the game up and going. If you ever notice, like, of course you did, how many menus, how many dialogue boxes, my God. And the crazy part is, this is probably the most approachable from the people that I've talked to that have played a bunch of these games before. This one's the most approachable. And, like, it's crazy that I'm 330 hours in, and I'm still finding basic functions for certain items that the game just refused to explain to me what that is. Like, I just found out what a stink mink does. It's just... It's not just a classy stripper name. It's crazy.
And I mean, it explains it when you first touch one in the game. It's like, it's not really the game's fault that you don't retain things, but
It kind of is.
Also, you know, you don't have a Tom screaming, "Oh, let's get on the monster quick!" Well, you're trying to look at what the heck it said when you pick the stink mink up. So there is that too, you know.
Burns, you played enough games with me. You know what you're getting into. Like, you know the full Tom experience.
I'm just saying. I'm trying to explain. In instance where you maybe can't read that when it pops up.
Yeah, could one of you guys do me a favor and just keep track of every time Brian drops how many hours he's put into this game? Because I think we're at 3 references so far.
Well, I said a lot, and then I texted how many in the chat, and now I've actually said the number. That's 3 times with the official only 1 being on here.
Yeah, so
you can get effed.
Thank you for watching the language on the show I don't edit. Casey, how was this onboarding experience for you, having never played a Monster Hunter game and like not playing anything in this ilk before? Like, what was this experience like for you going down the rabbit hole?
It was definitely rough. I mean, in the first 30 minutes,
that's not what you wrote down.
Yeah, I like that edit. I got a chuckle out of that. Thank you. Like the sheer amount of information thrown at you in the first 30 minutes of playing this game is super overwhelming, and that's why I said, like, when Brian 330 hours in, you're welcome, Tom.
Just like a counter or like a ding sound every time that someone says it.
It's the Rise drinking game. We'll just take a little sip.
Like insignificant little detail, is in this game, like. It's easy to forget stuff. Like, you get so much crap thrown at you in the beginning that, like, it's just like on to the next. And like Brian said, there's so many little dialogue boxes that pop up, and every single thing has a tutorial, which is awesome. But like retaining all that information is freaking impossible.
Casey, this is a general life question, but do you ever worry that you just think too much? Like, there's a big monster, you have a great sword, just go hit it on the head with the sword and see what happens.
Well, see, and that's like, at its basic core level of that, you can do that in this game, but if you do that, this game is going to be very, very slow and slogging for you until you realize, like, oh crap, like for me, and we're going to get into this, but like the weapon that I chose, the first time that we played, I'm just going in there and I'm just swinging at this thing and hacking away at it. And then like I started to do some research, which I do, like if I'm playing something, I would like to be as good at it as possible. So
it's called
I'm watching YouTube videos and I'm reading wikis and blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, holy crap, this longsword that I've been playing with is really freaking awesome. And there's so many different combos and different things that you can do with it. And I did none of that the first time. And if you never went back to in the tutorial, it said, oh, you can go practice weapons at the dojo or whatever the heck it's called, which I still haven't found. So I'm really, like that's one thing that we're going to talk about, but like mastering each weapon and like going into and figuring out how to use each one of the different combos and everything, like that's something that they don't really get into in the very beginning, and that all that 30 minutes, all that information they throw at, you can start a quest, you can go and you can hack on monsters, which is cool and fun, and you can do it with your buddies, and it's awesome. It's a good time, but like it's just so much information that they throw at you in the beginning, and it could be like super overwhelming.
Well, it's like, because one of the first things I mentioned to you is it's like, oh, you can go try out your weapons, and it gives you the chance to mess around with it, and it'll show you some stuff on the screen of like what you're hitting and different combos you can do and stuff like that. But then it's like trying over text to try to explain. You got to walk over. Well, and I couldn't remember for sure, but like you have to walk over the bridge and go to where the dog keeper person is, and you have to walk through there and find the boat, and then get on the boat, and then you like go through this hallway, and then you end up in this area where you can like attack things, and then go to the box and change your weapon to attack things with a different weapon, and so yeah, it's. and they do it's a little hard to find, but they do have a menu option where you can go into the menu and basically select where you want to go, and I think it'll teleport you there.
Yeah, there's fast travel around.
Yeah, and so that I think helps it. I don't remember that being something that was in there in World, but I could be wrong.
And I'm very much like Casey. Like, if I am going to play a game, I'm going to deep dive. I'm going to learn. I want to make sure that I am playing optimally in most ways. And the part that sucks is that I'm OCD enough that if optimally is slightly less fun than just being a psychopath, I'll choose optimally, because I don't want to waste. I don't want to be less efficient than 100%. This is why Casey and I have doctorates. It's like a min-max thing, right? So anyways. But he's right. Like, the thing too is like, yeah, you can go in and you can smack a monster with a hammer, but like once you start to learn iframes and you start to learn different kinds of like, hey, where are your hitboxes on things, the game gets a lot more complex, and the game forces you to do that, because as you go later on into some of these missions, if you don't learn to meet the skill gap increase, the game punishes you pretty aggressively, pretty fast. Not as hard as World. That Antonath, that first fire-breathing dragon in World, I mean, that was the first skill wall. That thing destroyed me, and I stopped playing that game a little bit after that.
I recall fighting that T-Rex with you. That was quite an experience. Let's have real talk here for a second before we get into weapons. Casey, you played most of the early part of this game with me being very directive and like pushing the pace on everything. Do you think that was an enjoyable way to experience this, or would you have preferred to be on your own, like trying to absorb every piece of information and like working through things on your own?
I think it was actually good, because it showed me that the game, yes, it's complex, but that there is some simplicity to it as well, where you can still go out and you can have fun. Because I'll be honest, like after that first 30 minutes, I was like, holy crap, I know, like I'm only going to be playing this for 2 months probably, right? And then we're going to move on to the next game. Do I want to invest this much time into this with all this information that's flying at me? And like,
the answer is yes. Yes, you
back,
do.
Well, I know
this game is awesome.
It is awesome, but like, it's hard for me wanting to be, really good at something right away and optimizing everything that I'm doing, sucking so bad in the beginning, right? Like, I was afraid, like when you guys were like, oh, stop on and play, and I'm like, I haven't done jack yet. Like, I'm going to go out there, I'm going to suck and whatever. No, and it's not like that. You can go out there and, especially if you're playing with your buddies, and you can kind of, they can get wailed on for a while. You can head back. You can heal up. You can create, like whatever.
Haul your egg across the map, whatever you need to do.
Stuff if you need to. Yeah, haul an egg across the map while they're beating on a monster. So there's more to this game than I guess what I initially. I mean, obviously there's a lot more to this game because what they throw at you. But I was so kind of overwhelmed in the beginning that I was worried that it was going to take a lot more for me to actually enjoy it before I got to that point. And it's already fun, and now I'm looking forward to making it even more fun when I get to actually really learn how to play this thing.
Yeah, and I think it's almost better off to have that kind of like co-op tutorial, I guess would be the better way to put it. Because I feel like you would have just continued to slowly work through the solo stuff and just continued to have been stun locked on most of it without getting like, okay, this is the basic gameplay loop of what you do. And now you have that like understanding of what the game is to then optimize off of from there. 'Cause like, you know, the breakdown of what Tom put at the start of the episode, I mean, that's the core loop of what you do. You prep for a hunt, you eat, you go on the hunt, you track down what you need to track down and kill it, and then come back and level up your weapons and gear, and then rinse, wash, repeat.
Yep.
It's just, it gets more complicated with the more difficult monsters and the different maps and so on. And, you know, depending upon what gear you want to create, you need to collect different things that aren't available in certain areas. And so that's where it starts to get much more, you know, that's where you can start to really dig into at least that understanding of, okay, I need to go hunt this so I can get this, so I can level this up and make this armor, or something along those lines. And so, I think it was good that you did jump in and play with us that night just to get that understanding, because it'll get you past some of those things. I think I had to play the first bits of World on my own, and it was just kind of like just so much information, and it is information overload at first, and you don't know if you're making the right decisions, and I think that makes it a little more difficult.
I think this game really benefits from having a quarterback, because like in World, I also grew up in the mean streets playing largely solo, and the game clicked solo, and I was able to play some with my friends, and that was awesome. But I think Monster Hunter as a franchise, it's just helpful to have someone that knows the ropes to show it to you. Like for me, an apt comparison is playing Overwatch with my friend Mike, who's also a part of the OiO community. Like he gave me the tools to know when to be in position, when to push, when to hold back, and generally speaking, I don't like being told what to do, but this is a game where a quarterback is very helpful.
It was something I really lucked out, because I have two younger brothers, and they have been playing Monster Hunter since like early in the DS cycle. So the boys have been playing it for about a decade, and it made a lot easier because they could explain, hey, these are what these things are used for. These are things that we can do to either control the monster's behavior, or we can impede them from doing different things, or even simple as like running around the map and picking up like, okay, pick up the spirit birds first, so that you have more stamina, you have more life, and you're not getting trucked the second you run into the thing. Having people there with that guidance is great. And I will also say that for a community that you cannot, if you're playing online, you can't talk to most people unless you have a party. For a game where you can't really communicate, it is one of the best online communities. I play with almost exclusively at this point. I think it's Japanese or Korean players. No Americans are still playing this game. But like, it's so much fun working together as a group, and you can kind of see where that shift happens. You guys start to kind of operate as one. And when you have a lot of weapon diversity within the group, so much fun. So much fun.
Yeah.
There's a swear word.
Yeah, appreciate that. At 18 minutes, 11 seconds, where on God's green earth is my pen?
I thought you don't edit this.
Yeah, I'll make a special exception for that one.
Hey, what weapons are you guys using? I know Casey's got longsword. That thing's, I think, considered meta-wise one of the top 3 in the game.
Which is why I chose it, because I did my research.
The dual blade is mine. I also did mine.
Although we're
Tom's
not playing
hammer,
the
I'm
expansion,
guessing.
so the longsword I think was, I mean, I think it still is one of the top 3, but it was really good in the base game too.
I chose the greatsword purely aesthetically. Like, I thought it looked cool. I'm like, oh, all right.
Nice.
I played the hammer in World, and I like the big, clunky weapons with a big risk, big reward. Like, I like finding my windows to hit the different monsters and to find the areas to hit them most effectively. For me, that's a really fun and interesting puzzle in the combat.
So you start off equipped with the great sword, right?
I think it's sword shield, isn't it?
Yeah,
Is
I think,
it?
yeah, it's something different.
Yeah, that's
'cause I
like
know
the bread and butter.
I switched to the great sword, and then Tom was using the great sword, so I switched to longsword.
Okay, because I remember when I first went to try it out, I started off with something. I like hit the like big mechanical dummy twice, and then I was like, okay, I need to do something different. And so I tried the dual blades. That didn't seem. It's just like when you're hitting the dummy and you're doing like 1, 2, 4 damage. It's just like, am I really hitting it fast enough to add up to what I could do with something else? And then I messed around with the gun lance for a little bit, and it made me remember how much I disliked playing with the lance in World. And then it would add a reload mechanic on top of it, which is just like, okay, that's the last thing I need is okay, I gotta hit this button and I forgot to hit this button. And so then I started using the hunting horn, and that's what I've been using when I've been actually playing.
I could have put money down on that.
I keep referring to it as the battle organ because it sounds much more like that, or a bagpipe. But yeah, it is the hunting horn, I believe. So,
or the doots of death.
Yeah, but it's really neat because you play. It's basically you have 3 different attacks that you do with it, and when you do a couple of each of those, and then you trigger an attack that basically passes those buffs off to your party members. Which I think is pretty cool. I'm still trying to figure out exactly which buffs are active and how many I can activate at once, if I can try to do all 3 of them. So I've got to mess around with that and figure that out a little bit more with what it's actually telling me on the interface when I'm doing everything. But it is fun. It's kind of like what you were saying, Tom. Though I tend to not worry so much. It's just like, okay, I'm either going to pull off my big combo or I'm going to get smoked. I guess I got smoked. Okay, well, I'll try it again, you know? And the hope is just that I don't take too much damage and faint, which I only did once, I think, when we played. And that was when we fought, like, what was that really big dude?
The Slimer.
Yeah, he looked like Slimer from Ghostbusters, though he was like a turtle or...
Yeah, Slimer Bowser.
Crocodile.
Tetrahedon? Yeah, Tetrahedon.
Yeah, that guy.
Yeah, maybe. I don't think that's what the name sounded like. It's only
It's like a Tetradon. Yeah, I know it. Like, it looks like a big, almost like duck-billed platypus.
Yeah.
With a big belly on it.
Yeah. So that guy killed me just because it's like he swallowed me, then spit me out, then jumped on me. And it was just like, okay, he can do all that. And I maybe shouldn't have attacked him on my own.
I was going to say, I think that's when Casey and I were both messing around with eggs.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I got impatient. I was trying to get one of the other monsters to come down and fight it, but once it would get close to where that was at, it would run away. It was just like, come on, follow me. I want you to weaken this thing up for me.
Yeah, the Pied Piper with his hunting horn over here.
Yeah.
With your hunting horn, you can get all 4 of your buffs out, and depending on what weapon you're using, Joe, you get different buffs. So one of my favorites is one where it gives attack up, defense up, and life rejuvenation. So the fun part about the hunting horn, which is like, so there's Rise, which is the base game, right? And then there's Sunbreak, which is the DLC. And actually, I'm playing through the DLC right now with Casey's brother, Corey, who's an Insect Glaive user. But with the hunting horn, I played all the base game with that one. And man, do people want you in their group. Like, it's funny because it does do a decent amount of damage. It can stun things well. It's almost like a Hammer Light version. But I played one game with 4 hunting horns together, and there was so much buffs going on, I didn't know what was happening anymore. So you just, like, if you got hit, it seemed like dumb luck, but, like, the creature could do nothing to stop the beatdown that was happening with the organs. It was just obscene. That could go a number of ways with how that vernacular sounds. Okay.
Brian, I'm surprised that you chose the hunting horn. That seems much more of a Burns party support friendly weapon. You don't strike me as a party support kind of player.
I chose it because when I was learning to play, I thought if I can't be helpful, at least if I can't be good, I'm going to be helpful. It's like the Red Green show where he's like, if you can't be handsome, at least be handy. So like that's what kind of the mentality I adopted. And then once I started getting good, I started using dual blades. And dual blades, once you kind of get used to where the weak zones are, you can rip off damage at a rate that's just absurd. Particularly because elemental damage in this game doesn't really have a soft cap. It's nuts.
Yeah, dual blade sounds much more like your speed.
Yeah, and you run around like a crackhead. That's essentially how it works. But I do want to learn sword and shield because, I mean, it's apparently so useful in every situation. and it is the kind of like iconic with the greatsword weapon of Monster Hunter.
Sword and Shield are Pokemon games, not Monster Hunter. Come on.
Yeah, come on. Brian, you played like 417 hours of this game. What advice would you have for new players to Rise?
Man, I mean, after hour 500, I think there's just a lot of things that was happening. So the one thing I would say, if you're learning Rise is different than World because Rise introduces a lot more maneuverability through the wirebug system. So the wirebug system lets you do a couple different things, right? You can either kind of use it as a jump. You can use it as a forward dash. If you're hit and you're in the air, like say in the case where Burnsy got thrown up and eaten by the duck-billed platypus monster, when he got thrown up in the air, had he wirebugged left or right, he would have pulled himself out of that move and he wouldn't have been able to be eaten. So
well, there you go, Burns. Just get good.
Yep, they're connected to a bunch of things, right? So you can either use them for movement, which is extremely helpful because it lets you kind of get out of a situation and recover, but they're also used to power up your what are called silk bind attacks. So each weapon in the game has a couple of what's called silk binds, which are like overpowered moves. So like dual blades, you can hit them with like a drill ability. There's another one that basically gives you iframes that lets you do a counter move. Longsword, Casey's longsword is one of the best like counter moves in the entire game.
I've seen bigger.
But it's all about, this game is all about mobility, and I think I would struggle going back to World, even understanding the core a lot more, knowing that the wirebugs aren't there and how much slower it would be to play.
World is a timeless classic, and anyone would be better for going back to it. Well, let's jump into our initial impressions of this overall package for part one. Brian, your perspective is a little bit skewed because you played 518 hours of this game compared to like 3 hours for the rest of us combined. But what are your thoughts on the overall package that is Monster Hunter Rise?
Once I hit hour like 600, I had really known that the hooks were in me. So I enjoyed Rise all the way through, and then it is crazy to me, and I'm sure this is all Monster Hunters, how differently the game plays with a different weapon. It's so dramatically different that it gives you this kind of fresh perspective, and it's kind of like Diablo in that way. It's that loot grind process, particularly because when you start to talk about some of the carves later on, like some of the important stuff you need to be like creating certain armors or certain weapons, there's a 1 or 2% chance that you carve it off the monster. 1 or 2%. Which gets to be nuts.
Pass.
Now, if you capture it, you can bump that all the way up to 3%. But it's just like, okay, some of that stuff can be pretty aggressive. But I would say that the game is so much fun because as you learn the attack patterns, as you learn about the monsters, from even from a narrative standpoint, you become so much more effective as a hunter because you have such a better idea of where those openings are. And late stage in this game, man, there are some enemies that have very little openings, but you can you can see the other hunters that know what they're doing because they know when to get away, and you'll see a guy stand up next to it when the monster's like belching fire, and you know that guy's toast. They're like, okay, you're doing this for the first time. So it's fun that you can feel yourself get better.
Burnsy, I'm going to turn to you for a question here. Do you have any desire to play Monster Hunter Rise with strangers on the internet?
I mean, probably not. I'd have to really get into it first and get pretty deep into it, playing with at least somebody I know, before I'd be willing to just jump in with a bunch of strangers.
Yeah, there's zero chance. There is less chance of me playing with strangers on the internet than there is of me getting those carves at the 1% late game stage. Like, it's not going to happen.
The cars?
Carves.
Oh, carves.
Yeah, I was referencing what Brian said because he made
it.
a good and elegant point, and I wanted to give him credit because I don't think we've praised him enough for playing 744
which you mangled
hours.
by mispronouncing the word carved.
Mispronounce your face. Burnsy, your impressions on the package that is Monster Hunter Rise through your first few hours in this experience?
I really like the Japanese infused base and style throughout the game compared to like World was just so generic, kind of fantasy, bland sort of. So I kind of like that it has a little bit more of an aesthetic to that. I think the the dango, I don't know, however you want to say it, system with the food, where it's like you put together 3 different buffs that you want to try to get out of the meal that you have before you go out on the hunt, is much more streamlined than like the weird recipe and like this will just give you a general boost on some things that the meal system was in World. At least from what I remember of it. Now, granted, I only played like 28 hours in World. I didn't get super far. And so there might have been more to it as you got into the 300-ish hours in Monster Hunter World. Riding the dogs, I can't remember the fancy name that they have for it.
Palamute.
Palamute, something like that.
Palamute.
There you go. It makes traversing the maps much faster and more efficient, which is really awesome as well. And then, like, the wire bugs to get to different areas of the map, I think, is a cool system also. I've noticed it pop up at different times to, like, do a recovery with a wire bug or whatever, but there's no way those things flash on the screen for such a small amount of time that I'm going to remember what 3 buttons I have to put together or 2 buttons I have to hit in order to actually pull that off. So that's something that'll take me a few hours to
That's
get
a great
figured
point. Every single button on your controller has a function.
Yeah.
And it's overwhelming.
Yeah.
And that's for people who hold a controller normally. Like, Casey, what kind of an experience are you having playing this game with your feet?
Yeah, my tiger claw technique. No, I don't. It's I don't know. It's going to be fun trying to figure out how to use each. You know, well, not each, but you know, I'm just going to stick to my longsword. But you know, I think this is going to be a really fun ride along the way, and I can see why Brian has so many hours into this game, because you know, if you really like it, going back and figuring out each individual weapon and how to use each weapon and leveling up all the different things in this game it's going to take you a really long time, and obviously it's fun because a lot of people have put many hours into this game.
I can tell you're really into it. The other night I was like, hey Casey, you want to play some Monster Hunter? And you're like, yeah, I'm watching this murder mystery, I'll be on in 20. I'm like, oh no, I'm just gonna watch another episode.
That was not my fault. Well, it kind of was, but Jessica wanted to watch another episode. What are you going to tell the wife? No, I can't spend time with you. I have to go play Monster Hunter and kill monsters with Tom. I mean, that doesn't really work.
I mean, it flies in this household. Like,
Maybe
I
if
have
it
to
was
go
my
do more
on this
free
call
stuff.
and said, hey, Kelsey, I'm going to get on a call about that video game you ignore. It can work. You just got to ask.
And I couldn't play with you because I was too busy getting my ass kicked in D&D. So
See, but would that have worked, Brian, had you been sitting next to Kelsey on the couch watching a show or a movie and be like, hey, I'm going to have to like bug out here for a second while I go kill monsters with Tom. You know, I don't know if that would have worked very well.
Kelsey and I are watching Lord of War with Nicolas Cage from 2005. Never seen it. There's 15 minutes left in the movie. We paused it, and we're going to plan to go back to it after this phone call is done. I'm committed to the bit.
Huh, I appreciate you. So, Casey, one last thing to poke at there. What is the bigger issue? Is it fighting the monsters or hanging with Tom? Like, what specifically does Jessica take umbrage with?
what's more insurmountable?
It would be the playing a video game portion of it.
Oh,
I think she's completely okay.
Yeah, I've known Jessica for a long
Hanging out with
time. I'm
friends.
sad that she hates me with a burning, fiery passion. For my part, my thoughts on the overall package, like, the basic truth here is that any new player is always going to struggle jumping into Monster Hunter. If Rise is your first Monster Hunter title, there's a steep learning curve to this. But I think if you're a vet, it's more Monster Hunter. Like, having played World and knowing what the core loop is, I was excited to hunt more monsters. Boom, I can hunt a whole bunch more monsters. And starting at the low level, it's like, all right, here's that stupid bird that holds up the rock. I'm excited to take him down again.
It does seem like you're able to get into it a little bit faster than World was. World, it seemed like it was a lot slower burn at the beginning, and maybe part of that was just because of having to do so much solo before you could go into double or into multiplayer. I guess one question I had for Brian is, how much of like the solo quests have you played? Because my understanding from like what I saw online with people talking about it was that really the solo aspect of it is actually basically just a group of tutorials, and the majority of everything that you do is through the hub quests instead. Is that correct, or are there some meaty things that you do solo as well?
No, you're pretty accurate on that. I mean, of the 700 hours I've played, maybe 10 are in that single player. But the single player thing is useful because it dramatically reduces the life on all the monsters to make it approachable for you. And it's just you kind of figuring out how the system works without having to deal with the online stuff, which the online adds all these extra layers and caveats of things that you have to kind of figure out. So it was nice that they're like, okay, in the basest sense, this is how this is going to work. Because beyond that, then they've got event quests, then they've got special quests, and then they've got rampages and all this other stuff that is just all over the place. But at least with that kind of one player start off, which is only, I think it's 1 through 4 stars or something like that, missions. It's enough to give you a basis of, hey, if you can do these, at least when you go into the online community, you know enough that you should be there. Because, man, I don't know how long it would have taken to learn this if my brothers didn't have the background and the enthusiasm for this game that they did. This could have been a situation, too, where I kind of burned out and got frustrated about I wasn't learning quick enough and wound up missing out on what is something that came out 2 years ago, and I'm still playing with friends of mine online a couple nights ago.
Yeah, with a game that's 2 years old. Ancient, archaic.
That is what it is in the world of video games.
Well, this episode of Game Pass Forever is part 1 of 2 parts. We decided to spread this game into 2 different episodes. So, Burnsy, what are you looking to accomplish over our next month playing more Monster Hunter Rise?
So I am hoping to make a good amount of progress. I think it would be good to try to get through at the majority of a lot of the solo stuff for sure. Just because I know scheduling time with a group of people is sometimes difficult.
What, you're tired of waiting to hang out until 9 p.m. every night?
Sometimes I have game time, the other 21 hours of the day that I want to take advantage of.
Wait a minute, you have a life outside of this podcast and your relationship with me, Burns?
Yeah, pretty soon I'll be able to throw the burden that is Kingdom Hearts off of my back and move on to playing other things. And so, but I think I would like to try to get into at least the hunting rank in the teens or the 20s. I think with World, I only got to hunting rank 9. Actually, I don't have to say I think, because I spent an hour tonight firing my PS4 back up, installing an update in Monster Hunter World so I could reload it, and my power had gone out, so I had to restore my databases, repair my external blah blah blah, all that stuff. So yeah, I played 28 hours of World and got to hunting rank 9. So I'd like to get into at least the teens, if not into the 20s, just to have a little bit more understanding of what this game is, and hopefully I'll enjoy it more. I do enjoy the weapon I'm using a lot more than the weapon I was using in World, so I think that'll help.
Yeah, Battle Organ for the win. Casey, your goals and ambitions for this game over the next month?
I'm just looking forward to getting better at combat in general. The first time we played, I was mainly just button mashing, just hitting the same one over and over again, and it was just super clunky,
And you were fine. You weren't a hindrance at all. You didn't slow us down. I had no umbrage with the pace that we had for our first session.
He did faint once, which is disappointing also.
So. Yeah, and
same,
the first fight, too.
It was the same one that I done.
Platypus monster. Too,
yeah. But still.
He also killed me in 3 hits. I was like, oh, this thing hits a lot harder than the other monsters that we were fighting. But yeah, just learning the different combos that the longsword offers up, and actually learning how to play it the way that you're supposed to play it, instead of just swinging it over and over and over again and then poking it and then dashing back to heal and then going back in and doing the same thing over and over again, which is all that I did, which, like I said, was fun. And
yeah,
was
welcome
fun
to Monster Hunter, dude.
But being able to kill everything super efficiently is going to be a lot more fun.
Yeah, it'll be great when he gets his binder fired up and we can just watch Casey min-max and We can just be sipping a potion in the background saying, oh, he's gotten pretty good. Look, our Casey's all grown up.
Just keep using my whetstone even though I've been sharp for like 10 minutes already. Just like, Casey's got this. Shrink.
Just in case. So, Brian, as you're right on the threshold of quadruple-digit hours in this game, what is left for you to keep this experience fresh? How do you keep spicing up your Monster Hunter experience?
So there's something called event quests, which allow you to, there's a tremendous amount of DLC you can buy for like Monster Hunter. And some of it's super cool. You can make your cat look like Mega Man. You can make your dog look like Amaterasu from Okami. You can get all of these different kinds of like armors and stuff that you can actually get by just beating certain monster events that are just really, really hard. So I'm doing some of the very end game ones. The very, very end game event I still haven't beaten. It's 2 different monsters that you're dealing with at the same time, and both can one-shot you. And it's crazy that you'll play for 25 minutes and have nothing to show for it because someone got wiped at the very end. But what's been fun now is I'm playing Sunbreak, which again is the DLC, and Casey's younger brother Corey picked it up again. And it is so much fun. He and I just get on, run around. He flies through the air like Spider-Man with his insect glaive. I stay on the ground and stab things to death. And it's just a lot of fun getting to have those wild moments of like your buddy was there and then suddenly he's been deleted by a creature.
Quick question. You guys are playing it on the Switch. What are you using for voice chat on the Switch? Like, how do you communicate with your friends? Are you just like FaceTiming as you play, or how do you work out communication?
Same thing. We phone call with headphones. Like that sucks. And I really wish there was crossplay because I would love to play this with you guys. I think that would be so much fun.
Yeah, then we could all stand around and just watch
Xbox
Brian kill
sucks.
everything. Disagree that Xbox sucks, as we do an entire segment dedicated to the Game Pass lineup every single month. Nah, it's a flawless machine. For my part, my goals, ambitions for the next month, just bash lots of monsters. Like, I am really turned off hearing that you need to play online later in the game. Like, I have zero desire to play with strangers. So I'm going to kill as many monsters as I can with my friends. I'm going to enjoy that ride, and then maybe I'll go back to World afterwards, because World really clicked with me, and I seem to be able to solo a lot of stuff there.
Well, Clarity, real quick, you don't have to fight online. Remember, online just lets the monster diversify where its aggro is. But every person that you add in the group, up to 4, increases the health pool of the monster. So you could, in theory, do all of this by yourself. It's just, it gets a lot harder when all of the aggression is solely focused on you.
Yeah, because I think the game tells you it multiple times. It's like, you could do the hub quests on your own, but you better be prepared. So let's see, maybe you could just be Superman out there and, just running around with, somebody with a great Guts. You'll be Guts from Berserk, just running around on your own trying to, like, slice things open.
Yeah, given my terrible twitch reflexes and my general lack of skill in all things on planet Earth, like, I'm sure that'll go great for me. Yeah,
especially since
it's
you
going to be
chose
super
the
fun.
slowest weapon in the game. That's probably going to really work well for you.
Perfect, yeah. I will flail hopelessly. I'll be pointing the wrong direction. I'll get swallowed and, like, poured fire on. It's just going to be awesome. I can't wait. Monster Hunter Rise, game of the decade.
Yep. Run away, drink some antidote, run back in, get one hit, go back out, drink more antidote.
Yeah.
Run around, find an antidote herb quick.
Swing and miss. Gonna be great. Any other thoughts on Monster Hunter Rise as we get close to wrapping up part 1 of our discussion?
The other thing that I noticed in the game that's at least seems to have happened a lot more than it ever happened in Monster Hunter World is that you can, like, mount the monsters and, like, have them attack stuff a lot more than I remember it happening. It seems like it's a lot more streamlined and easier to do that than in World. I don't remember doing it much in World at all, but
Well, it happened like our first 5 fights in
I was going to
Rise,
say,
yeah.
multiple times almost. And so, like, there was one time where I jumped on one beast and attacked the other one, and then jumped off of that one, tethered it to the ground, and jumped on the other one and attacked it. And so, I don't know. It's I think that's just silly fun too. So I enjoy that.
Yeah, fun is good.
Joey likes mounting beasts.
Yeah.
So you will be able to ride a monster virtually every fight, and you can do damage to the other monster. And if you wind up ramming them into each other, you put the other one into a stun state, Joe, just like you did, and then you go at it again. And early on in the game, those monsters do so much more damage than you guys do. Go to town. Just make sure you do it as often as you possibly can.
I think I do more damage than the monsters do.
You don't.
Great sword.
Mental damage.
Just gave me mental damage. Monster Hunter Rise will be back next month to share our final full impressions of this game. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Outside is Overrated, the standalone segment of Game Pass Forever. Each month, our patrons vote on the games that we play. If you enjoy this content, or if you would like to be part of the conversation, please back our show on Patreon. Check it out at patreon.com/OiO. For Brian, for Dr. C, for the Hobbybox, Joe Burns, I'm Thompson Logic. We'll be back next month to finish our discussion on Monster Hunter Rise. Thanks for listening, and stay inside, kids.